Almighty, ever-living God, the most merciful and compassionate, we thank you for creation and the life you have given us. Together, we people of diverse religions, spiritual expressions and indigenous traditions, who invoke you by different names, humbly pray for your providence and protection, in the midst of the COVID crisis. Strengthen and guide government leaders, and private agencies, especially our administrators, faculty and staff, for the wisdom to do what is right and just. Enlighten the minds of students, that despite the educational limitations in this new normal, they may study diligently and effectively. Bless our families, remove our fears, and help us to trust in your love, so that by our example and generosity, we can inspire and help others. Grant all of us, especially the frontliners, good health and accept those who have died in your kingdom. Amen.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, anak ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiging, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisili. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mabaga, may nilagang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng matawat mo'y tagumpay na naglilindi. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang mali magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng buwan, bakit pagsinta mo'y langit sa piling mo? Aming ligaya na pamay mga pirang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
and 9 units of electives. So that makes it 36. The 1996 GEC has a minimum of 63 units. So it was reduced to 36. So short description and explanation of the coverage of the MMW. So this is the nature of mathematics, appreciation of its practical, intellectual, and aesthetic dimensions, and applications of mathematical tools in daily life. So the course begins with an introduction to the nature of mathematics as an exploration of patterns and as application of inductive and deductive reasoning. By exploring this topic, students are encouraged to go beyond the typical understanding of mathematics as merely a bunch of formulas, but as a source of aesthetics and patterns of nature, for example, and a rich language in itself, governed by logic and reasoning. The courses then proceeds to survey ways in which mathematics provides a tool for understanding and dealing with various aspects of present-day living, such as managing personal finances, making social choices, appreciating geometric designs, understanding codes used in data transmission and security, and dividing limited resources fairly. These aspects will provide opportunities for actually doing mathematics in a broad range of exercises that bring out the various dimensions of mathematics as a way of knowing and test the students' understanding and capacity. So, course outline for this consists of two sections. So the first part would be the nature of mathematics. The second part is mathematics as a tool. For the second part, it has also two parts. For the second section, it has also two parts, which is the data management. And for part two, there are a list of suggested topics which the teacher can choose. It is suggested that can discuss 2 to 3 topics amongst these topics. Okay, so the first one is the nature of mathematics, which includes mathematics in our world, mathematical language and symbols, problem solving, and reasoning. So for the mathematics in our world, this is the core idea here is mathematics is a useful way to think about nature and our world. So subtopics here would be, this includes the discussions on patterns, numbers in nature, the Fibonacci sequence, and the golden ratio. The learning outcomes for this are identify patterns in nature and regularities in the world, articulate the importance of mathematics in one's life, argue about the nature of mathematics, what it is, how it is expressed, represented, and used, express appreciation for mathematics as a human endeavor. So basically, it's on what role does mathematics play in our world. So how mathematics is a tool, quantify, organize, and control our world, predict phenomena, and somewhat make it life easier for us. Next is the mathematical language and symbols. Core idea for this is, like any language, mathematics has its own symbols, syntax, and rules. So basically, the aim of this topic is to expose students to the world of mathematics as a language in order that they may be able to read and write mathematics texts and communicate ideas with precision and conciseness. So there are 4 learning outcomes for this. So they discuss the language, symbols, and conventions of mathematics, explain the nature of mathematics as a language, perform operations on mathematical expressions correctly, knowledge that mathematics is a useful language. Next topic for the first part, for the first section, is problem solving and reasoning. So the core idea for this is mathematics is not just about numbers. Much of it is problem solving and reasoning. So this includes, the topic here includes the deductive and inductive reasoning, problem solving strategies. Example would be Polye's strategy. This topics discusses that math encourages one to critically think through situations, to reason or argue logically, and to creatively solve problems. Again, there are 4 learning outcomes for this. Use different types of reasoning to justify statements and arguments made about mathematics and mathematical concepts. Write clear and logical proofs. Solve problems involving patterns and recreational problems following Polya's 4 steps. Organize one's methods and approaches for proving and solving problems. Data management is included on the second part of the suggested course outline, which is under mathematical tools. So the core idea here is statistical tools derived from mathematics are useful in processing and managing numerical data in order to describe a phenomenon and predict values. So this is the topic where the topics on statistics are discussed. So use of technology is encouraged in this discussion. So this builds on the concept and skills learned in statistics in senior high school, but deepen what have been learned and highlight skills in interpreting statistical results. There are 3 learning outcomes for this. So one is use variety of statistical tools to process and manage numerical data. Use the methods of linear regression and correlations to predict the value of variable given certain conditions, and advocate the use of statistical data in making important decisions. For the second part of the second section, these are some of the suggested topics. So one is geometric designs, which has the core idea that geometry can help enhance one's artistic prowess as well as enrich one's own culture. So learning outcome for this, apply geometric concepts, especially in isometries, in describing and creating designs, and contribute to the enrichment of the Filipino culture and arts using concepts in geometry. So this one, you can discuss this. The example for the discussion would be on the textile weaving designs. Another suggested topic is coding or codes. The idea here is the utility of mathematics goes beyond the mundane. Mathematics enables development of codes and ciphers that are useful to individuals and to society. So there are 2 learning outcomes for this. Use coding schemes to encode and decode different types of information for identification, privacy, and security purposes. Exemplify honesty and integrity when using codes for security processes. Another suggested 2 topics are linear programming and mathematics of finance. So for linear programming, learning outcome would be use mathematical concepts and tools in other areas such as in finance, voting, logic, business, networks, and system. And for mathematics of finance, support the use of mathematics in various aspects and endeavors in life. And last, for this discussion, logic. So this is understanding of symbolic language and logic, as well as familiarity with precise models of deductive reasoning. So we have here 3 learning outcomes. One is state arguments using a formal logical framework. Next is evaluate validity of arguments using truth tables and deductive method. And last is assess and present views about the logical structure of real world arguments. Thank you. Here are my references po. Kayo na ba?
Pag in-unmute mo yan, ang sound na lalabas.
Nakamute daw. Walang sound.
Meron.
Column 14, Mathematics in the Modern World, Students' Differentiation in the area of senior high school track, curricula, and topic coverage in accordance with syllabus. Why the need to identify areas of differentiation? For senior high school track and curricula, student choice of major field in high school reflect their target employment after college, and its curricula contains the development of their skills, knowledge, attitude, and aspirations. Hence, degree of scope and depth of coverage must be adjusted accordingly. For topic coverage in the GEC 14 syllabus, focus and type of applications of SKA outcomes per GEC 14 syllabus topic must be oriented to the field of specialization SKA. And the greater or the higher learning motivation will be achieved if topic coverage is more reflective of field specialization learning outcomes. For curricula, in STEM track, this has developed a skills and knowledge to take courses in chemistry, CSIT, biology, meteorology, engineering courses, and nursing. In ABM track, this has developed the knowledge and skills to take the course in accountancy, management, economics, and finance. In UMS track, this has developed the skills and knowledge to take the courses in social work, sociology, philosophy, political science, journalism, English, and education courses. And in vocational and technological track, this has developed the skills and knowledge to take the course in civil technology, electrical technology, food technology, automotive, agriculture, fisheries technology, and other courses. As a service college in Bicol University, the College of Science Mathematics Department student differentiation in different eras comes from 92 different classes last first semester of school year 2020 to 2021. And 47 different classes this second semester of school year 2020 to 2021. And out of 692 students that comes from different track in senior high school, 23.3% of that comes from STEM track, 14.9% of that comes from UMS track, and 21.8% of that comes from ABM track, and 15.6% of that comes from vocational and technological track, and 24.4% of that comes from other tracks. Student differentiation in the area of topic coverage in accordance with syllabus. Mathematics in the modern world topics and different approaches in different curricula in senior high school. Topics coming from syllabus. Mathematics in nature. The general approach is real-life pattern in nature, architecture, arts, designs, human behavior, animal behavior, heavenly bodies. The approach in STEM track is from simple to advanced patterns and abstract reasoning. The approach in ABM track or courses is from simple financial system patterns and licensure exam patterns. And the approach in UMS track is simple to intermediate patterns, visual patterns, patterns in the vocational technological field, licensure exam types of patterns. And the approach in vocational and technological track is simple intermediate patterns, visual patterns, licensure exam types of patterns. For topic mathematical language and symbols, the general approach is use of symbol as a form of communication, math to English statements. The approach in STEM courses is the use of codes, encryption, decryption, use of special mathematical operations to develop skills in logic formulation, introduction to problem solving. The approach in ABM track is translation of mathematical word problems to equations or inequalities. And the approach in Hume's track is translation of mathematical word problems to equation or inequalities with illustrated steps, as well as the approach in vocational and technological track. For the topic from syllabus problem solving and reasoning, for STEM track, varied and expanded scope of types of mathematical problems taking off from the orientation in the mathematical language and symbols discussion coverage. Complexity of applied problems in student field of specialization is gradually built up depending on the capability of the students. And on ABM courses, problem solving is oriented towards those in the field of business, accounting, finance, management, and economics. For Hume's courses, use of the Polya system of problem solving and assist students understanding in the process and reasoning of mathematically valid solution, as well as in vocational and technological track. For the topic from syllabus mathematics as a tool in data management, where the general approach is on basic of probability distribution and simple hypothesis testing, data processing using MS Excel or statistics applications. The approach in STEM courses is integration of research design and statistical tools of analysis and introduction. The approach on ABM courses is calculator-aided processing, sample data processing with visual display of results of data analysis, as well as Hume's courses and vocational courses. For topics mathematics as a tool in linear programming part 2, the approach in STEM courses is linear programming, system of equations coding. In ABM courses, systems of equations, lessons in algebra, strategy for improving learning retention of systems of equations. And the approach in Hume's and vocational and technological courses is algebra, systems of equations up to 3 variables only with illustrated solutions. And for the topic mathematics of finance, the general approach is simple and compound interest use of basic mathematics of investment formula. The approach in STEM courses is savings and loan mathematics. The approach in ABM courses is savings, loans, amortization, and endowment. And the approach in Hume's and vocational and technological courses is savings and loans mathematics. For the topic logic, where the general approach is basic rules of logic. For STEM courses, the approach is intermediate to advanced exercises in logic. And for ABM, Hume's and vocational technological courses, the approach is Venn diagram aided solutions. For apportionment and voting, the approach is for some fields of specialization in ABM tract, political science and business finance. Mathematics of graphs, this is optional for STEM fields of specialization in STEM courses. and for UMS courses for architecture and industrial design. For mathematical systems, this is recommended for STEM, especially for CSIT, and also for UMS track for education courses majoring in mathematics. So the overall and general teaching and learning differentiation in the area of learning and area of teaching in different tracks in senior high school. In the area of teaching in STEM courses, more online classes, lecture and discovery and dynamic discussion methods. For ABM courses, 50-50 asynchronous and synchronous class, lecture with discovery and interactive methods. For UMS courses, 50-50 asynchronous and synchronous class, with a shorter lecture, less discovery method, less interactive method, as well as in vocational and technological courses. For the area of learning, the approach in STEM courses is more independent learning opportunities, less facilitated learning, and less group activities. So, for ABM courses, the approach in learning is combination of independent guided learning and small group activities. For UMS courses, the approach is more guided facilitated learning and also in vocational and technological courses. And for UMS, more and bigger group learning activities. And for technological and vocational courses, teamwork and hands-on learning activities. That's end my talk, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, my section of discussion will be on students' preparation for the MMW. Most of the content of this discussion are called or taken from the results of our study beginning in 2019-2020 and ongoing. Okay. For the for this section, we will be discussing the senior high math assessment test results, the student learning styles, and the MMW diagnostic test results. Okay. Based on only 692 samples, we have thousands of this data, but which we need to collate and comprehensively go through in terms of integrating all the results from 2019 to 2021. And this is a sample of 692. And that tells us that 15.6% only are from the STEM high school track and 21.8% are from the ABM track. Understanding that the mathematics course in the freshman year in college would require some orientation of mathematics, this will only be less than 40% of the student population with expected orientation from high school on mathematics. The rest of this, from UMS, VOCTEC, and others, are those students beginning in high school who would like to free themselves from quantitative logic in the sense that they either do not want to be in the field of mathematics, or that they shy away from recognizing their God-given talents of quantitative logic. And that tells us that these are the students we need to reach out to and package JEC 14 as a friendly, necessary tools for developing life skills, which will serve them up until they say goodbye to the world. Okay, the high school mathematics assessment test used a validated tool, which means it is psychometrically valid. And that tells us that the results are in the lower range, indicating that for us, for a perfect score of 45, very few are within the expected range, which will be an IQR, or the interquartile range of the third quartile and the first quartile, which tells us that there is this difficulty initially from students entering into their freshman mathematics class. That's a challenge to the teachers as well as a challenge to the students to give MMW a chance of introducing to themselves a tool which could serve them for life. And if we look at how much of this distribution are in the lower than 14 score points, and that's from 45, that's about 30% percentile ratings. And only very few of them are within the greater than 25 range. And indeed, it's a struggle for teachers to encourage students, motivate students to go past their high school trauma or their preconceived ideas that mathematics will be a difficult subject. So if we look at the statistical results of the senior high math assessment test results, the mean is low with standard deviation which is small, telling us that most of the students congregate on the lower scores. And when we look at the 95% confidence interval of this band, and that one is very low, verifying and confirming that indeed the validated senior high school math assessment test results tell us that students are not inclined to give mathematics a chance. But at the math department, all of us try our hardest to befriend our students first, let them know that we are here for them, and that we will not box them into one box, but we will develop the boxes independent of what they have learned from high school, but by what we expect them to learn in college. And congratulations to the math department for having this kind of attitude built from our experience, that being strict with completing the syllabus does not work best for us unless from the start we just gradually build up the volume, the complexity, the difficulty towards the end of the semester, initially working hard on winning students' confidence on the care, the compassion, and consideration of their professors. Okay, so what are the implications of the high school math assessment results? Okay. This tells us that less than 50% are in the STEM and ABM track, and most of them are in the non-math oriented high school track, which tells us that almost 50% are not ready for college level mathematics based on their senior high track. And based on the high school math assessment test results, more than 50% are tentative on entering their MMW classes with the preconception that it will be a difficult class. We are here to announce that it should not be. Give it a chance. And then the beautiful world of mathematics, as introduced by Miss Lola, that the nature of mathematics is a revelation that one formula in math is applicable across so many fields of specialization, which tells us that with the required varied modes of learning based on the senior high school math assessment test results and the senior high tracks, we at the math departments have packaged varied packages of offering MMW to different sets of fields of specialization. Okay, with respect to the learning styles, we have the traditional at 68.80%, the visual at 17.30%, and the cognitive traditional at 12.70%. Just trying to appreciate this information tells us that it really is a challenge to be at the math department as professor. Why? Because those who are prepared to accommodate us as their friends would only consist of 12.70% at the initial stage. And so much of it, almost 90% of them, do not make conversations with the language of mathematics. And you would notice that even in this webinar, the nature of the math professors are those who do not put on lipstick, who do not probably comb their hairs, but we do take baths, okay? Which tells us that traditional conversations are not steeped in the quantitative language of life. And that tells us also the nature of Filipinos as being gullible to kind of um, manipulation of the advertising world. Because if we were quantitative, we will not be making conversations in the alleged efficacy of certain products, but we would, as this 12.70%, the cognitive individuals would. If we look at the truly cognitive or the rational individuals, will only be 0.6% of the total student population. If we doubt the results of this, let me inform all of you that the students utilized an openware standardized test on the learning styles assessment. Therefore, I have full confidence that these truly reflect the learning styles of students psychometrically categorized, but by that kind of instrument. What are the most preferred teaching learning delivery of students? And surprise, most of them prefer online because this now is in the new normal, and that 24% would prefer emailed notes or modules, and the rest of them with different combinations. Okay? And if we look at the face-to-face preferred teaching learning mode, it will only consist of 2.40%. Okay. How are we to understand all this information? When we look back on what the learning styles are, if we look at the learning styles as psychometrically measured and categorized, the online modality would require packaging the content and structure to be able to seamlessly work with these individuals who are on the traditional learning style spectrum. What are the implications of these learning styles and personality types? Okay, cognitive, which is cognitive traditional, will be 12%, and this will require mentoring, which tells us that these individuals will have the necessary initial skills and competencies for working with quantitative logic and the mathematical language, which will require progression from the givens to the conclusion or to the final statement, or from the final statement working on its applicability on specific cases. The visual will require use of visual cues and less use of heavy reading. So that's a typographical error in there. And for those who preferred emailed notes and modules versus the online, this one is a challenge for us because providing the modules and emailing them to students is being done, but on the development of modules which are student friendly, that would be another discussion. As we understand module development from the concept of how the professors have waded through the dark, murky waters of the new normal, development of modules which are student-friendly would have to take the perspective of the student and not the easy way out of just converting the lessons to hard copies. So what does it mean? We will have to go through all of the results of our preliminary studies, which research proposal is still under wraps and is awaiting approval. But we have all the data which could help us polish the delivery as well as the nature of the different packages of the Jack 14 MMW learning modules. Okay. Now, with the MMW diagnostic results, we have thousands of these results. What do we see in here? Okay. Of the 43 perfect score, we have various diagnostic exams given out to all MMW students and thousands of them. It tells us that 32 of 43 items were correctly answered by less than 50%. Some of the items, it will take us a long time if we present all our results, have very low percentage of correct answers. And looking at how we have the graph, when the perfect score is way out in here, that is a confirmation that all the math teachers are required to help students develop their skills, and that the initial state of preparation for MMW for all of our students are way off on the low spectrum, low score spectrum. Okay. If you cut it off at 40, which is less than 50% of the 43 points, we have more than 90% of the students in that spectrum. When viewing the results based only on the mean of 15.6 and the median of 15, if we look back on the shape of the distribution, it more or less has a shape of a normal distribution, which will be expected of a high sampling ratio. We expect this to be reflective of the initial week preparation for MMW. And there is much room for the GEC 14 preparation to improve student skills, knowledge, attitudes, and aspirations. Why do I include aspirations? Most of educational planners will just speak about SKA, skills, knowledge, attitudes. But in our classes, we develop the kind of positive or progressive aspiration of students for taking stock of what they learned in MMW and bringing it with them for life. And we get to see it in the QCE results, the QCE feedback of students on how much of the MMW instruction and learning dynamics have pushed some of our students, if not most of our students, to truly appreciate mathematics after a semester in MMW, when initially there has been so much room for fear, for trauma, for tentativeness, that MMW is not one that they would probably like to prefer had they the option to run off. Okay. Now, because 32 of 43 items have lower than 50% correct answers, that tells us that we need to deliver the lessons in bite-sized pieces. And how we do that is truly a demonstration of the commitment of math professors. Why? It is very easy, so easy for professors to shove students into one learning box in, in the sense of the one-size-fits-all mumbo jumbo. If you would like to be that as a professor, don't be part of the College of Science Math Department, because there are no mumbo jumbo things in our department. What we do would be the hard task of committing ourselves to building specific learning boxes to fit students' preparation. Some of our students, if they are here, can attest or refute this statement. Okay, so what need we learn from the teaching learning systems of GEC 14 so far? Before COVID, teachers could be rigid, could be the boss, because we could engage physically with them and look them in the eye, and then more or less gauge if we were able to put across the conversation and transfer knowledge to students. But before COVID, teachers and students needed to adjust to the expanded scope of GEC 14. That is why not many of those who want to teach GEC 14 for the sake of having academic load, because they have other tasks, cannot teach this because of the difficulty of integrating all of the topics and putting them together into one holistic package. Before COVID, teaching and learning had to find a balance between what can be achieved, what must be achieved, and what students can absorb. That was a challenge that we early on were able to recognize. And teachers had to respect the transition period of the K to 12 curriculum. If one wanted to be a strict professor in the declaration that he or she is the best in the class, and force students to go up to the level of the college level mathematics without respecting this transition, that students of the initial group of graduates were just forced to cope with teachers who were ill prepared to handle senior high mathematics, even junior high mathematics for that matter. And students needed to bridge the gaps in the senior high school training and the HEI's expectations. If we look at the declaration on the syllabi, across all courses after the K to 12 enhancement, you would think that everybody is intelligent. And truly, everyone is intelligent, but the intelligence spectrum would have to be categorized according to the learning and personality styles of the students. A quantitative competency can be visually, cognitively, and qualitatively expressed in many forms. One in writing, another in the visual arts, and another in the pure sciences. Before COVID, learners could access socially visible links to peer and mentors support system. Those who were okay with visiting us at the math department could always give us a visit and provide us with their cues, the questions requiring clarifications. Now, moving to the period of the new normal, teachers and students were pushed into unknown territories of teaching, learning in extraordinarily challenging times. Extraordinarily challenging times because there was this cloud of difficulty, of, of transcending psycho-emotional difficulties and still engaging oneself with students and students also engaging themselves in the teaching learning dynamics. The fundamental issues of learning had to be adjusted in frameworks that most of us did not have experience because we were pushed to work in a virtual world where not all professors are comfortable with speaking to oneself and not being able to make conversations with physical bodies. It's like being in a world of spirits where the only conversation that comes from the other side are the silence of the spirits and those that probably one can hear if we were in the higher dimensions of life. And teachers and learners both were forced to traverse the world of online learning, which required logistical support. Not all had the gadgets, not all had the technical knowledge, not all had the experience of being in that virtual world. Teaching also had to accommodate the expanded knowledge base with students able to access Google and YouTube. And if you were not careful with what you said or the content of your learning materials, you could be placed in a very difficult situation, but which you need to be prepared for. And learners had to cope with weakened systems of social support systems, of peer and mentors. Now, what can we now say about a movement towards large GEC 14 classes? The possible justification for this would be that we have to validate internal cost efficiency of our classes, which means less expense on salaries and honoraria, minimize the faculty complement requirement, and optimize resource utilization, and that the general education subjects are not major subjects, hence may be dispensable. That's a question, that's not a statement. Or perhaps it does not require deep understanding by students. A question again. Now, let's try to provide a rational sphere of asking these questions or providing the grounding for either validating these justifications or refuting these justifications, or just for providing divergent views of these justifications. One, not all professors can handle well a large class, regardless of whether you're very good at your field of specialization or not. Because large classes would be challenging from many, many perspectives. If we do not have the research-based evidence on this, let it be understood that we would have to Two, just look around on how many of the professors, even just in this university, who can handle large classes. And we could also look within this domain of professors who cannot profess their fields of specialization for some reason or another. Some faculty also do not have the required experience for managing varied inputs from students of different fields of specialization. Adding on to this burden, large classes will defeat the purpose of higher education. Are we going up the higher spectrum of knowledge, or are we going down? Logistics required for large classes are also required. Are this or will this be in place? The normal expansion of class size do not jump from 35 to 3 times the size, because the projected maximum large class for GEC classes, not only for MMW, is 105. Have the learners been consulted? When we say learners, that includes the extended range of stakeholders. If the answer is no, then perhaps we need to consult them. If tuition is adjusted for quantity versus quality, then I'm for the possible justification of cost, internal cost efficiency. But if tuition is adjusted for quality, then I'm not for it. That's my opinion, and I'm only one of the small voices in the wilderness. Okay. What are the possible consequences of large GEC 14 classes up to 105? There is this American Council on Education, which have validated that some star professors are dynamic lecturers, but not all of them can handle big classrooms, and there can be really pretty poor learning experiences for most of the students. If your only image are those of large classes, effective large classes, are those that you have watched in movies, then bring yourselves into the reality of big classroom classes, which have been verified to be poor learning experiences for students. If you listened well to how much challenge entry-level math preparation of freshman students are, big classrooms are in no way good for them. The downsides of very large impersonal classes are clear. And this will be from the Association for the Study of Higher Education. That's higher education, not lower education. Okay? While an excellent lecturer can lead a big and compelling class, not all professor can. And it is easy for students to feel lost and feel they don't belong. That's a scary place. In the face-to-face classes, it will be a very scary place for the virtual classes. And therefore, I have provided these guide questions for the consideration of the possible consequences of GE14 classes. Has this gone through adequate planning, simulated assessment of what ifs and then what? Is it necessary? For all intents and purposes, because it has been thought of, then the answer in here is yes. Is this the most feasible? Feasible does not mean that it is the easiest or that it is the most convenient. If it is the most convenient and the easiest, for whom? For which group? And is it sustainable? Are we using this as a knee-jerk option, reaction to a felt difficulty? Is it reflective of the university's core value, excellence, and regional leadership? When we say region, not the Bicol region, but the ASEAN region, if that is what we're working for as a future identity? Is it an explanatory variable of academic excellence? Without the results of studies, then the best that we can say in here is to pause and think some more. Are the necessary assumptions to justification for large lecture classes complied with? And if the answers are more of no's, then I thank you for giving us your time of asking these questions and engage with us in future conversations using the language of mathematics, using the language of logic, using the language of evidence, and using compassion, consideration, and love for the learner beyond love for convenience, love for the easiest way out. Thank you and good morning.
Yeah, so today I will be discussing the general forms of teaching pedagogies on teaching mathematics in the modern world. So Ma'am Carol discussed earlier the preliminaries of the flexible learning also. Some issues on teaching mathematics in the modern world. So I am Jason Lucille and I will be discussing this part. So start tayo dito sa kamustahan. So to answer this one, how are you? Can I ask you to visit menti.com po on a new tab? So I will, pwede po kung say for instance kung magamit kayo ng laptop or any desktop, punta kayo na sa search engine then or any say Google, let's say mga Firefox, yung mga ganun po. Open kayo ng menti.com then once mag-ano po kayo doon, mag-start, hihingi siya ng code. So you will need to enter this one. It's 80, 60, 50, 54. Okay po again, so it's the site is menti.com and the code is 80, 60, 50, 54. Sige po. So ayan, so ang kailangan lang po dun ay send po kayo ng any 3 adjectives probably na pwede nyo i-describe kung ano ang pakiramdam nyo ngayong araw. And once done po, huwag nyo close yung inyong tab. Balik po ulit kayo sa ating Zoom or if you're using the Facebook Live, balik po kayo dun. Makikita nyo po ngayon sa screen nyo kung ano yung mga naging answers din ng other participants natin. Okay, so heto po yung mga answers nyo. So medyo, the good thing about this one is that this is a real-time presentation. So once nag-send po kayo ng answers nyo, mag-flash na po agad-agad sa screen natin. Sige, siguro let's have another 20 seconds, then let's discuss this one. Okay, again, so dun po sa mga naka-join pa lang po, kindly enter menti.com. Heto po nasa topmost portion ng screen natin. Then, ang code po na kailangan i-enter ay 80, 60, 50, 54. Okay, so from our several participants, kung mapapansin niyo, heto ang mga general description na sinend nila. So these are happy, majority are happy. Kasi kung makikita natin sa screen natin, happy talaga yung nasa gitna, no? And siya rin yung biggest sa ating mga sinend na. Ibig sabihin, several participants answered or key in happy. Then we also have here great, overwhelmed, hungry. Ay, wala tayong recess this time, no? So probably most of you, if hindi ka nakapag-breakfast, most of you are hungry na rin. So sleepy, good, better, overwhelmed, blessed, motivated. So we also have here answers na pretty pa rin. Parang mali ata yung ano ko, hindi ko masyado na makita dahil sa pastel colors. We also have here nervous, good, anxious, fine, meh, confused, neutral, blessed, thankful, okay, sleepy. So, yan. So, yun ang mga naging answer natin. And after this one, sige, 2 questions lang po ito. After this answer, sige, ito po ang next na gusto kong pumalaman. So, pabalik po ulit ako dun sa, sa page kung saan kayo nag-enter na menti.com. And this time po with MMW as a subject of reference, either I assume na nag-attend kayo ng ating webinar ngayon. It's either you are a student or a professional na somehow interested po kayo sa topic na mathematics in the modern world. So at this part, ito lang po ang gusto nating malaman. With these things, gusto ko malaman what's your stand about I love mathematics, online class is fine, stress level is manageable, it is clear what we are studying, and I am learning a lot from these subjects. So mag-click lang po kayo dun. 1 being strongly disagree, pag 2, disagree, 3, neutral, 4, I agree, and 5 po, pupunta tayo sa right part, I strongly agree. Then again, same thing, once done po, pabalik po ulit tayo sa sa ating page. If you are nasa Zoom, sa Zoom page po, or if you are in the Facebook Live, sa Facebook Live po tayo. So here's the result so far. So at least we have several participants na nakapag-send na kanilang answer. So when it comes to this line or this, I love mathematics. So it's nice to see na the average of the responses ay 3.4. So which means that a little above the neutral stage. So ibig sabihin, our participants at this point, hindi naman sila yung mga super love ang mathematics, but at least okay pa rin. And it's interesting to know na meron talaga nag-answer na strongly disagree. So siguro, one of the reason why you are attending this kind of webinar ay para makita ano ba talaga ang ano ba ang mathematics sa makabagong daigdig sa Tagalog natin dito. Then, eto, another issue na gusto nating malaman dito ay ano yung stand about the online class. So, if you will notice na since 3 is the neutral part, nasa among the 22 responses, 2.7 ang average natin. So, ibig sabihin, more of my inclination tayo na onti dun sa strongly disagree. So, a little uncomfortable probably. Pero this is just very shallow discussion about this issue. Then, the stress level is manageable. So, nasa neutral lang talaga. So, parang probably when interpret this one na yung stress level ay sapat lang para maitawid ang pang-araw-araw natin, no? Parang gano'n. Although, if we will see, meron nag-answer pa naman na 2 na strongly disagree. We also have here 6 na disagree lang. So generally, 7 talaga is the neutral. So halos nasa gitna din. Then, it is clear what we are studying in MMW. So varied ang ating responses. Kung makikita natin, may mga nag-respond talaga na halos nasa disagree. And meron naman tayong responses na nasa right part, which is the agree part. Okay. Then, on the last statement, I am learning a lot from this subject. So, eto, ang ina-assume ko dito ay siguro if you are a student na nag-attend kayo for this one, so gusto lang namin din malaman kung ano ang status nyo sa subject. So, it's nice to see na kahit paano, di ba? Medyo papunta naman tayo sa strongly agree. Ibig sabihin, you are learning probably not a lot, but at least we are learning. So, why are we doing this kind of activity sa ating menti.com? So again, balikan natin yung responses bago tayo bumalik sa ating discussion. So previously, I asked you kung ano ang inyong status or how are you. So hetong mga naging answers natin. So it's nice to see kahit paano. Mix naman siya, di ba, kung titignan natin. While meron talagang happy, great. Well, pinakamalaki na dito yung tired, hungry, and overwhelmed. So ibig sabihin, halo-halo ng emotions natin. And for the second question na kinonduct natin dito ay ano yung parang status when it comes to the subject. Ito na po ang naging responses natin. So it's nice na karamihan naman na sa atin ay gusto ang mathematics sa ating mga participants ngayon. So okay, let me stop this one and let's go back to sa ating discussion. Okay. So bakit natin ginawa yung mga ganung kamustahan? Ayan, kasi this is a meet, greet, repeat activity. So the meet, greet activity, the teachers do before the class begins during the face-to-face discussion, hindi na natin siya na-experience ngayon. Diba? Nung nag-shift tayo to flexible learning, nasa virtual na tayo. Isa to sa mga madalas na ma-overlook natin gawin. Parang usually, pag kinoconduct natin ang classes natin, diretso na tayo sa lesson proper. But based sa mga previous studies, they almost always respond positively when the teachers hang out by the door, saying hello and calling them by name. Furthermore, students say that teachers who meet and greet are the ones who also care about them personally. In this personal interest motivates them to do better in class. So, which means that even if we are conducting our flexible learning virtually, di ba, usually ganun ang ginagawa natin, we need to take time to connect or make an effort para magkaroon tayo ng connection sa mga students natin. So tulad ng ginawa natin kanina, di ba, we need to establish ano ba ang status ng mga estudyante natin whenever we are conducting our classes. And in relation to that one, so tulad na na-mention ko po kanina, our topic for today, at least on my part, is this one. We will start with the understanding flexible learning during educational disruption. We will also discuss characteristics of flexible learning and the dimensions of flexibility. Okay, so when it comes to the flexible learning, let's define flexible pedagogy as It's a learner-centered educational strategy which provides choices from the main dimension of the study, such as time and location of learning, resources for teaching and learning, instructional approaches, learning activities, support for teachers and learners. So previously, nung walang pandemic, sanay tayo sa face-to-face discussion. So which means na parang halos ang pilot ng ating discussion are the teachers, although it's still pinapractice natin yung student-centered or the learner-centered, but malaking adjustment ang ginawa natin kung paano natin itatawid or paano natin establish ang learner-centered when it comes to the synchronous classes. So to answer this question, ano ba yung mga practices na ginagawa natin, especially in teaching mathematics in the modern world, para ma-address pa rin ang ganitong issues? So by the way, in this way, teaching and learning can be flexible rather than fixed. So which means that we need to capture paano kaya makukuha natin yung interest ng students and paano natin ma-address yung issues nila na matatawid pa rin natin or makukuha pa rin natin na ma-address pa natin yung mga learning outcomes na kailangan natin gawin when it comes to the delivery of the subject. So what are these characteristics of flexible learning? So we have here 3. So the first one, flexible learning, it offers learners rich learning choices from multiple dimensions of the study. So that's why at this point, diba, diniscuss ni Ma'am Carol, our department chair, a while ago, nag-profiling tayo dun. Tingnan na natin, ano ba ang background nila, the senior high school tracks, anong strand nila, ano yung kanilang preferred method of delivery, and ano rin yung situations nila, the access to the internet, mga ganyan. Kasi these are the factors kung paano natin ma-discuss din yung subject natin. Then another characteristic, it applies learner-centered constructivism approach, which is indicated by a shift from the teacher taking the learning responsibilities to the learner taking these responsibilities as well. And in fact, di ba, sa case kasi na ganito, very limited ang access natin as students, as teachers sa ating mga students. Once na nag-off na sila ng screen, hindi na natin monitor ginagawa pa ba nila yung kanilang mga dapat gawin sa subject. So, in this case, halos learner-centered talaga ang mangyayari na. Also, learners are granted a variety of choices and take more responsibilities for their own learning. So that's why profiling is very essential. And also, at the end of the teacher, kailangan i-capacitate natin ang ating mga sarili sa mga skills na kailangan natin. So, in the case of the Bicol University, nagkaroon ng capacity building and flexible learning before the start of this school year. So, from July 13 to July 22, through teleconferencing, just the Google Meet and the Zoom meeting, nag-conduct na massive training for the faculty members para ma-assess how ready, kung paano ba natin i-conduct ang ating mga classes dito. And on our end, after the discussion of this one, we need to know ano naman yung ating mga learners, the students. So, Ma'am Karen earlier discussed this one as well as Ma'am Emmy, yung general results natin. And on our end, diba, na-mention ni Ma'am Carol kanina na dapat kailangan natin i-address or i-assess ano ba ang situations ng ating mga students. So in my case, pinrofile ko rin sila kasi it could be, diba, as mentioned before, it could be na every subject, iba rin ang kanilang situation sa other classes natin. So based from my several classes, one class ito ang naging status. So for the senior high track, majority are from STEM. Then another class, ito medyo varied. Mostly are from GAS, then UMS, then a little from TVL, as well as STEM din. On another class, majority are STEM. Same thing with this class, 77.3% are from STEM track. And lastly, ito rin ay 78.3 ay STEM. So kung mapapansin kasi natin, since Bicol University observed the block system, more or less kapag kayong course ay say may inclination sa engineering, more or less most ang nag-prefer talaga nun ay nasa STEM strand. So importante ang profiling when it comes to teaching mathematics in the modern world kasi malalaman natin kung ano ang baseline natin. Paano natin i-discuss yung mga subjects if we know that most of the students ay ganitong background. Another thing in profiling for the flexible learning is yung access nila sa internet. So as mentioned, since wala tayong face-to-face opportunity through virtual na like it's either Google Meet, via Zoom, or any other platform, ang kailangan i-profile doon ay ano ba yung kanilang ginagamit na access to internet. So in this part, ito naman naging result ng ating klase. So kung mapapansin natin, majority may access sa home Wi-Fi, but still, most of them are using mobile data, which is prepaid din. Then another class, ayan, heto, mas malaki talagang percentage of the class are using the mobile data. Same thing with this one. So halos, karamihan talaga ng mga estudyante natin are mobile data. So as a teacher, ano bang kailangan natin effort dito on our end? So ibig sabihin, diba, because since majority of our students are using their mobile data, hindi natin pwede i-maximize yung time natin na, say for instance, for the mathematics in the modern world, 3 hours per week. So in some cases, if nakalump siya sa 1 meeting per week na 3 hours, which means na kailangan natin mag-compromise or else mauubos din ang load nila agad-agad. So those are the other issues kasi ito yung mga factors na makaka-affect din kung paano natin kukonduct ang ating klase. Then another thing na kailangan consider dito ay the most preferred teaching and learning delivery. So ito yung mga naging answers nila. By the way, these results are auto-generated from the Google form na in-answer nila. So if you will notice, mostly answered either asynchronous learning or synchronous learning is fine. And although nilagay natin sa option yung hard copy modules to be submitted once in a while, as mentioned ng previous lecture kanina, but still only few students are choosing this option. Kasi nung nagtanong din kami nito, ang hirap magkuha ng copy, then i-retrieve nila kasi hard copies yun. So, ibig sabihin kailangan ng transportation, and also, mas pinili pa rin nila yung magkaroon na lang ng ng digital copy. And same result for this one almost. So, almost 50%, which is actually 45.2%, either asynchronous learning or synchronous ang preferred nila. And medyo hati naman yung synchronous and asynchronous. And for this one, either asynchronous learning or synchronous. And lastly, ito pa rin ang preferred nila. So in this case, diba, although as a teachers, gusto natin i-address ang issues ng ating mga students, but we have to meet halfway. So, kasi diba hindi ka naman pwedeng as a teacher, for this class, ang gusto nila, so purely online ka or what. So, parang ibig sabihin, we need to go kung ano or we need to assess. Since ang status ng ating mga students ay ganito, ano kaya pwede natin gawin? So, on our end, ang ginawa namin as teachers for the mathematics in the modern world, during the maximum of the first hour of our assigned schedule, we conducted a synchronous class. Then mala-flip classroom, afterwards, students are free to work on their own, whether it's offline na or they can talk with your classmates para gawin ng mga activities din. Then for the last one, heto. So isa sa mga factors na naka-affect, ano yung gadget nila na ginagamit for the class discussion? Why is this important? Bakit kailangan kaya natin i-capture kung ano ang ginagamit nila sa and the mga students natin? Well, if we are using majority of our discussion na PowerPoint, halimbawa, in fact, I'm not sure kung tinanong ko naman yung mga students ko sa ganitong case, yung mga ganito daw kaliit, kailangan na i-pinch, tapos i-zoom para makita talaga in details na maging answers nila. Since from our survey, ang nag-reflect dito ay mostly are using their cellphone na personal. In fact, for this one, 75% for this particular class. Then another class, 83.9%. Another one, 62.9%. At I have, at least some are using their laptop then for the discussion. But still, diba, as a teacher, kung titignan natin, since mostly are using their cellphone, ibig sabihin, hindi tayo pwedeng basta-basta mag-shift from one platform to another. Or during our discussion, hindi tayo parang too small ang mga details ng ating slides para makita pa ng mga students natin. So, yun po. Yun ang considerations natin when it comes to doing the flexible learning. So at this point, let's discuss the dimensions of flexibility. So what are these? So the strategy of flexible learning can be implemented at different levels, such as the teaching and learner management, operational management, and institutional management. So since medyo limited ang pwede natin gawin sa institutional and operational management, doon tayo mag-focus po na sa teaching and learner management. And focusing on this dimension, so we identify the following key flexibility dimensions. So I will be discussing sa mga succeeding slides natin na when and where the learning occurs, what and how students will learn, how to deliver instruction, and what strategies could be used for organizing learning activities. So indeed, so for the case of our flexible learning, when and where the learning occurs. So in this part, it means at the time of participating in a course, starting and finishing a course, participating in learning and the pace of the study can be flexible. And ano yung mga ginagawa nating practices sa case ng ating mathematics in the modern world. So since we are practicing then the academic freedom, hindi kami ni-restrict na use Moodle or Google Classroom, but majority are using the Google Classroom. So ito po mga ginawa natin. So we have here the Google Classroom, but also a faculty member made use of the Facebook group. And nagkakaroon ng conduct na ang study ng aming department kung paano ba nakaka-apekto or ano ba yung effect nito sa mga students kung iba-iba ang platform na ginamit natin. Actually, marami silang mga pros and cons din. Say for instance, for the Facebook, if we are using the Facebook Messenger, free pala siya. So students who do not have a load, pwede nilang mabasa ang mga text sa Messenger. But pag kailangan nilang mag-view ng mga pictures, doon na po gagamit ng data. But we need to maximize these things. Yes. Okay. Then the next one, what and how students will learn. It allows students to determine the sections in the sequence of content according to their desire, pathways of learning, forms of course orientation, size and scope of the course through modularization of the content. So, isa to sa mga shift na ginawa natin. So, since, di ba, nag-profile tayo ng mga students, ang ginagawa nila ay hindi lahat pwede makapag-attend ng synchronous classes. So, on our end, we cannot demerit those students na hindi na nakaka-attend. Kasi di ba, before, during the face-to-face classes, mabilis lang tayo mag-track ng ganito. Pag absent, ibig sabihin physically absent yung student. But in the case of the flexible learning, paano natin mag-gauge yung mga students na hirap, other than the capacity sana, but at this point, brown out, di ba, or naubusan na ng load. So in this case, we have to make adjustments then. And in fact, marami tayong variants then when it comes to teaching. So isa sa mga ginagawa ng aming department ngayon ay other than the synchronous classes, nag-prepare po kami ng mga lecture notes then. So sa lecture notes, andun ang discussion as well as the copies of the exercises and the activity worksheets. Okay, when it comes to the delivery instruction, so flexible delivery offers a suitable range of how and where students can access learning materials. So ano bang pwede natin gawin dito? So in our case, some are using the YouTube channel. So in-upload dito ang learning materials so that para dun sa mga students na parang gabi ang mas stable ang internet connection nila or for this period hindi sila makaka-access, then mabuview pa rin nila ang kanilang mga lessons whenever mas convenient sa part nila. So other than this one, the YouTube channel, isa rin sa faculty member namin sa math, ang pag-conduct po ng klase ay di ganito. And yan, kung papansin niyo, would you believe na yan po ay handwritten? So if we have the opportunity or may talent sa pagsusulat ng magkaya, we can also use the Google, this is not Google, but the Microsoft PowerPoint. Then pwede natin siyang gamitin yung green screen, then pwede tayo mag-project doon. Yun na rin ang gagamitin natin during the synchronous class students. The advantage of this one, pwede natin i-save lahat ng mga slides natin, convert them to PDF, then yun na rin ang magiging notes na pwede natin i-deliver or i-share sa ating mga students na hindi nakapag-attend ng klase during the actual conduct of the subject. Also, so in some cases, gumagawa. So actually, if you are observing or attending the webinar series ng CS, di ba? Several weeks ago, diniscuss din na ang mahirap sa status natin ngayon since iba-iba ang preference ng ating mga students and we try to address those issues. Other than the lecture videos, the lecture presentations, ginagawa din natin sila ng mga lecture notes. So ito rin ang isa sa mga effort na ginagawa natin. Yeah. And in some cases then, di ba, kasi on my end, nag-try ako mag-record din ng lesson tapos yun ang binibigyan ng mga students. Then, nahirapan ako. So what I did was have a record of the lecture proper then during the time na hindi sila kapag-attend. So yun para magiging alternative nila. So pinupost na lang din natin sila sa Google Classroom so that yung mga absent students pa nila ma-access even after the presentation ng klase. And when it comes to the strategies that could be used for organizing learning activities, so here are the things. So the learner's choice can be offered using several instructional approaches such as lectures with tutorials, independent study, discussion, seminar groups, debates, student-led discovery approaches, and educational gamification. So isa sa mga kailangan natin effortan na in the case of the flexible learning ay yung class interaction. Diba? So earlier, I'm discussing the learner-centered approach. And pag learner-centered kasi, it's important na dapat may interaction ng mga students natin. And sa Google Meet, pwede natin sanang gawin yung may mga presentations and all, and group activities, but it's hard to manage then. And in the case of the Zoom, pwede tayong gumamit ng mga breakout sessions so that may opportunity naman yung mga students natin to discuss their answers. And gusto ko rin i-share dito in one of the activities. So what I did sa aking klase ay may part ng naka-template na rin. So once dineliver ko yung mga activities, so ang kailangan gawin ng students ay talk with some of their classmates. So at 2 or 3 classmates, then afterwards, gather their answers, afterwards discuss their similarities as well as the differences. So bakit natin kailangan magawa ng ganito? Kasi it's hard to assess the students din kung tayo parating teachers ang mag-a-address sa mga needs nila. So in this case, somehow, we need to adjust or capture ano ba yung mga other modes of instruction na pwede natin ma-simulate yung ginagawa natin sa face-to-face classes. So yun po, yun ang mga practices na ginawa namin sa mathematics and the modern world. And that ends my presentation.
Okay, good morning. The last part of the first part is assigned to tackle special forms of teaching learning based on QCE. Play. Ayun. As we know, there are some forms of teaching and learning strategies where we are familiar with the direct instruction. This is what we are usually doing pre-COVID. No, even during COVID, we on the onset of the online learning, we have this way of having the direct instruction. But this is purely teacher-centered kind of learning delivery. The new normal requires us that the main or the center of the learning delivery must be our students. Okay. Or other forms of teaching, we have the or learning delivery also, teaching and learning are the one we have the flipped classrooms. Okay. And the other one is the differentiated instruction, as some of our colleagues already discussed a while ago regarding the methods of the style of or the kind of instruction using differentiated and flipped. Yung flip naman ay although it's online, we can still do the flip kind of learning delivery. It's just that it's not from the classroom, but it's from the from where the students or from where our students are, maybe at their own home. Okay. Ideally, we have these other forms of learning delivery, the inquiry-based kind of learning, the cooperative, and the problem-based learning. We can actually incorporate this in our online kind of discussion, though with the limitation and restrictions of many things, just like the internet connectivity of our students, sometimes the power interruptions. That's why of the many students that we have, okay, it's not always. We cannot always have the pure, the full attendance. Okay, there are even cases that the whole semester some students were not able to attend the session. Okay, so we have to devise or find a way of rendering or deliver the requirements of MMW for our students in the new normal. So with the new normal, teaching MMW is a bit of a challenge. Okay, as teaching mathematics requires creative demonstration. Okay, na hindi natin usually nagagawa because of these so many restrictions. Okay, that's why there are comments. Before we continue, by the way, the comments here are in toto, so we do not I do not edit these comments here. These are from our students. Okay. You can see here that there are comments like this na luway-luway sana huring pag-ihi ko duwang examples na tulos ang natapos. Gahira ka man sako. Di ba? There's also a comment that there's a need to be more specific and detailed when explaining some topics that can't be easily understood by the students. So these comments are actually parang an echo of the or a mirror of what is happening actually in the online kind of learning delivery, because we don't know what is happening at the other side of our communication. Okay, so we don't know the predicaments of our students. Perhaps they're just there for the attendance or for some other reasons, but they're not actually for the lesson or for anything. Okay. Also, there are comments like because it requires mathematics compared maybe to some other subjects, it requires a hands-on and interaction. Okay, so it's not easy for rendering or delivering the topics for mathematics using purely online, as our as previous discussant mentioned that. Many of our students are just using phones with the restrictions of having an stable internet connection. And yung iba, hindi naman sa kanila yung phone, hinihiram lang. Okay. So, ganun yung mga predicaments. Okay. That's why the challenge here is on how to deliver the requirements of the course. Okay. And how we can assess whether the learning delivered are actually being absorbed or not by our students. Okay, unlike maybe in the classroom setting that we can see from their faces whether there is absorption or none, di ba? Makikita mo kung nagbi-blink yung mata, kung na-absorb yung sinasabi mo or na-digest ba o hindi. Samantalang dito sa online learning ay hindi natin yun nakikita. Okay, that's why some students will comment like fail to deliver the lessons well, and I think it is somewhat helpful if he or she the blanks there are be actually omitted for general privacy of the professor. Okay, then one here is ang bilis po ni magsalita, nakakahilo minsan, lalo mat ang subject. Mga ganyan. So, this is a reflection of the things that are happening actually on the other side of the learning delivery, yung mga recipient ng ating lessons. Okay? Also, the comment of explain sometimes through Tagalog so that we will better understand the topic. So we know the language barrier between us and the students that we have. You know, sometimes we speak our own dialect, but some parts of the Bicol video, some parts of the some of our students are not actually fluent on the language that we are actually using. Okay. Also, I can see the passion on my professor to teach us, even though there are times that we have difficulties in communicating with each other. Okay, so the passion, almost many of us have this kind of characteristic of having passion on teaching MMW. Okay. That's not only within the 3 hours of a week, but beyond the 3 hours that we have allotted for the week. So what we're doing, okay, given this predicaments, given this kind of conditions, as others have already discussed or mentioned, okay, what we are doing in the departments, okay, in the handle and delivery of MMW. One is the what they call this, the tangible kind, or the tangible passion for teaching. Okay, so ideally we are using in the online kind of learning delivery. We're using the different modes of, or different platforms. We have the Google Classroom, and for the asynchronous discussion, we use Google Meet and Zoom, and some are using actually Facebook group. But the common means of communication with our students is the messenger. Sabi nga, because even if you didn't have the load or data, you can actually read or participate in the discussion with the professor. Okay, these are kinds of way of teaching that are actually student centered. Unlike before in the old days, that in direct kind, we were in the center of everything is the professor. Now in the 21st century, and in the needs of this new normal, the being or making the students the center of learning delivery must be taken into much consideration. Okay, and we have to consider whichever works for them or what is available for them. Okay, so we have to ask them if they are available, or if they have cell phones, if they have stable internet connections, or if they whatever means na pwede sila, if they're okay with emails only or anything. Okay, so whatever is available for them. Okay, maganda sana kung meron silang if ideally for the delivery of MMW, if we have the G Suite. I don't know if the Dominicans have this, but for the G Suite, we have the Gmail for our students, the docs, the sheets. Many, I think, are familiar with this kind of suites, and the education-focused social media platforms, just like Discology and CISO. But because with so many restrictions, we're limited to only things that are available for our students. Okay. Now, what are the responses, or what are the responses from our students? Okay. So because of this, they say some comments were like this: makes math easier for me by breaking down overwhelming concepts. Would always take the extra step for the sake of our convenience. So they're happy. Maybe our students are actually convenient in the way we are handling, or we manage the learning delivery. Okay. Many of us are doing this actually. Some made some recorded videos of math lesson, which were expounded clearly and made available in the Google Classroom, in the Google groups, or in the Messenger, or in the Facebook page or group. Okay. Meron pa nga na yung parang kanina, meron tayong Mentimeter. So we also have creative super games at ang linis ng PowerPoint. So these are kinds of characteristics na yung ibang professor ay talagang fluent in doing PowerPoints. Okay. And respond comprehensively to academic queries. Ito maganda to because the Plexi kind of learning is not limited only on the scheduled time. On my end, my line is always open as much as possible. If queries are given at midnight, or if still awake at midnight or the wee hours of the morning, I respond to the queries because some students in far-flung places only have the signal, maybe at a particular time. So they even go beyond their comfort zone just to find a signal for their phones. Okay, that's why I always make my line open anytime for them. Okay. Also, the activities were challenging and fun. So they include, for it not to be boring, maybe they include games, di ba? Trivia. Uh, One of our colleagues actually, before the start of the lesson, uh, giving some trivias. So this is part of the challenging and fun part of learning delivery. And the other one is, I'm looking forward to the learning videos you post in your YouTube channel. Okay, so perhaps you know who has this kind of YouTube channel. Okay, maybe many of us in the long run will have the same. Will do the same. Okay, we'll see. Then the other one is a consideration of student skills and capacity. Okay, so we have two. One is the adjustment of scope and depth of content. As you can see from the first part of this discussion, the content of MMW is a bit little of everything. But though it's a little of everything, it has many challenging part. So na parang if we go on with all those things, not everybody or not all students will actually absorb, or have the skills and capacity to process and digest and absorb those things. Okay, so there are some adjustment in the scope. The adjustment usually is depends on the client. Okay, we have this diagnostic test. We know we check on the diagnostic test the kind of students that we'll be having for that semester, and the same based on experience of the kind of students that we have. We adjust we depend the kind of adjustment in the scope and depth of the content. And of course, if we change the scope and depth of content, we also make some adjustment in the style of teaching. Okay, perhaps many students or cannot sustain the 3 hours of lecture in, though it's online. So what we do is we have some asynchronous kind. Okay, we divide or we partitioned our discussion into some asynchronous and some synchronous kind of delivery. So that's part of the adjustment of the style of teaching. Maybe you can we sometimes apply flipped classroom, the differentiated kind of instruction. Okay, as some part or some adjustment of the kind of teaching. With that, the students were able to pace themselves without fear of being left behind. Hence, it's generally motivated to exert greater effort to learn. Okay. Although not everybody will actually benefit that, but majority, as big part of the population will have that benefit of having to pace at their own. Okay, so without fear of being left behind. So hindi yung parang nakikipag-compete with the rest of the population. Okay. Now, what are the responses? Some will say, some students made these comments that they understand students well and let us learn at our own pace. Okay. Second, create alternative ways in assisting us to understand this subject and grasp the lesson. So perhaps this kind of comments in the QCE is our reflections of what the department or what the faculty, the professors of the department are actually doing. Just to deliver the kind of learning that our students actually needed. Okay. Also, we have this comment that mathematics is a hard subject for most of us, especially in this new learning system. But we'd made it possible for us to understand the subject. Despite the struggle in virtual learning, managed to teach us the lessons and send previous discussion in our Google Classroom so everyone could catch up with the lessons being provided. Okay, so that's parang a verification of the things that we are trying to do in the department. Okay. Also, one other concern is respecting students' differences. Okay, the learning styles, the personality, and the kind of math preparation. As we all know, not for example, in the engineering class or in a comp-sci class, not everyone actually has the STEM kind of preparation. Some are actually from UMS or some are actually from ABM. For some reasons we don't know. Okay, it's not clear to us. Okay. Ano yung ano dito is that respecting one's student differences is a non-judgmental accommodation of student quirks for as long as these are tolerable. Okay. Minsan ay sometimes when we were asked to open their microphone or open their videos, you can see the different kinds of students that we have. Okay. Yung iba ay akala mo ay nasa palengke lang or kung saan-saan lang na parang wala sa classroom. Sa bagay, kahit naman yung face-to-face, may mga estudyante tayong nasa classroom na ang ano pa rin ay actuation pa rin ay parang nasa kalsada pa rin. Okay. But we allow this kind of with the prevalence or with the incidence of so many things associated with the depression, we can't do nothing but we have to be extra tolerant with this kind of actuations from our students. Okay, we allow them to express whatever they want to express as long as they are tolerable. Okay, sabi nga ay respect begets respect. Okay, this is an assurance that the class is a safe place for them to learn. Okay, and bullying inside or within is not actually allowed. Okay, so what are the comments? What are the responses? Okay, so again, has the ability to make the students love mathematics even more because of her excellent teaching skills. Okay, so also not providing us with so many activities. Okay, also the comment on the creative alternative ways in assisting us to understand the subject and grasp the lesson. Create an environment for the student to not be awkward in class. Okay, so these are the responses on the respecting student differences kind of concern. Okay. So part of the respecting student differences is the concern on the multiple intelligences nung clients, ng estudyante natin. No? So we have to adjust our classroom or online classroom with this kind of multiple intelligences. So one for me on my end, one adjustment is that I do not allow them to open their cameras, videos. Okay, because maybe some students don't want to see others kind or others predicaments, whether their predicaments are in the good or in the bad side of. Okay. Second is the student learns to keep a personal form of the most effective learning modality for himself or herself. Okay, it's kung ano yung mas gusto niya na gawin, mas applicable para sa kanya. So ang importante ay there is absorption in the learning that we are trying to deliver. Okay. The comments always apply to real life situations. Okay, the topic that being tackled. Okay, then techniques on how how he or she approaches us with ito yung sabi natin, jokes and enthusiasm in teaching. And patience in teaching mathematics is unbelievable. Okay, so I envy those kind of professors with unbelievable patience in teaching mathematics. Knows that every student has different approach and impression on the subject, and tries to make it easy to learn for us. Okay, so those are direct from our students. Okay, the other one is recognition of low science high school math assessment results, buried science high school tracks, buried field of specialization. So the adjustment on the GAC syllabus, the topical content, as Ma'am Mayra already discussed, there are 3 parts of the JEC 14 syllabus. Okay. So to improve on weak math preparation, we have to make some adjustment in the content. That's why not all parts of the syllabus are actually included in the discussion. Okay, we select parts of mainly of the last part of the syllabus. So mentored learning modes via immediate feedback on student submissions. Okay, this is also when we provide classworks or any activity for students. As much as possible, we return the paper with feedback. Okay, so that there will be an interaction between us and the students. Okay, through feedback mechanism. Okay. So ano yung anong responses nila? Meron kasi mga parts na they will say, di ko mag-gets yung lesson niya kasi learning mathematics through online is a challenge for us, lalo na sa slow learner sa math. Okay? Also, we have this comment that explains sometimes through Tagalog so that we will better understand the topic. I hope should find a way of strategy para ma-absorb namin lessons. So, these are some comments that requires us to modify or made some adjustment in the syllabus and the kind of learning delivery that will be introducing to our students. Okay. Also, the differences in preferred teaching delivery. Okay. So, may mga students na gusto learning direct. There are students that prefer the emails only or the modular kind of thing, the synchronous kind. There are also some students na gusto yung face-to-face or yung online, okay, na nakikita yung professor na nagsasalita. Okay, mga ganyan. There are some ways here, okay? You can just integration of various learning perspective based on class student profile results na mention na ito kanina. Project-based learning is one of the preferred, okay, especially for those students na working. As we know, some actually of our students are working. They just sign and they go in the synchronous discussion, but they are not actually there. Okay. So ano yung responses? So like this, line is always open. More samples in our answer sheet were provided possible. Then creating alternative ways in assisting us to understand the subject and grasp the lesson. Okay? Providing us videos and activities that aided me to learn more about mathematics and how it is applied in real-world situation. Okay? Always give enough time for us to finish the activities. These are just some of the comments. Okay, many of the comments. Okay, that ends my part. So thank you and good morning.
Okay, that's it for our topic one. Thank you, Professor Jonathan, Professor Emmy, Professor Jason, Professor Angela, and Professor Boyon for that topic on teaching and learning strategies for math in the modern world. So now we would like to hear from our participants for the question and answer. So we have here the first question from Professor Bongais Mambadet. So uh, maybe any of the speakers may answer. So here is the question. Students are using only their data and could not sustain in long duration of lecture periods, and the internet also affects instruction and learning. So the question is, what other teaching styles can we use to encourage 100% participation of our students, especially on mathematical aspects of teaching sciences? So, anyone from the speakers?
Good morning. Thank you for that question, Madam Bongais. Statistically, in this new normal, 100% participation is, I think, a very high percentage to work as a target. And our experience, because of the interconnectivity difficulties from both ends of the spectrum, teachers and students, as well as those who share the broadband with the students as well as the teachers. So the highest kind of participation that can be targeted and achieved, we do that by multiple types of delivery. Like as mentioned by Sir Jonathan, we record our lessons and then make it available to all those who have been absent, and it can be accessed at any time, and also in consideration of working students, and we get those information from the profile of the students. We also send all activities and learning materials via messenger, and we have actually more than 50 students on modular mode. And these are students not limited by internet, but because of the high activity in their fields of specialization, some of these students opted for the modular mode, and that has been accorded them. That's it, Madam.
Thank you, Mamboyon. Any other questions from our participants? You may put it in the chat or in our FB page, BUEMD FB. So, although I can just read some of the comments here, congratulations to the BUCS Math Department. So I guess if there are no more questions from our participants, maybe you can just pull it in and we can ask it later after the discussion of topic 2 from our uh, next speaker, of course, Professor Carolina Boyon for the footprints in teaching. Sorry, yes. Yes, ma'am, you may start. Numeric footprints for COVID-19.
Okay. Thank you very much for staying with us. This is our second topic, and this is a topic intended to help individuals who are interested in acquiring some evidence-based reference on how to address some of their fears, some of their actions, some of their decisions relative to COVID-19. Okay. To appreciate the tracks of COVID-19, let's look at this real-time bubble graph and look at how this virus, okay, you can look at the lower left side of the screen. As the bubbles in the specific areas of the world gets bigger, these are to account for the okay, look at the bubbles and look at the left portion of the screen. These are real-time data on the infection of COVID-19. And as the bubble grows, you look at how it goes through all parts of the world. And the Philippines, as small as it is in the global map, we register a good-sized bubble in there. Okay? And the smaller bubbles are concentrated on some parts of the world. And if you look at that, that would probably be on the tropical portion of the entire world. And the real-time cutoff is March 8th, which is yesterday. And the day's data for today will be included by tomorrow. Okay. So how informative is infographics? And that also tells us that as we move into the digital age, there is much information to be appreciated, but we need to be careful on the choice of information. And why did the math department develop this topic? First, COVID-19 was a shocker. We understand that the plague and the pandemic have specific panels of incidents. This pandemic tested humanity's resilience. And you will understand what we mean by this as we progress on with the presentation. It continues to get through health protocols and safety nets because, as of today, there still are considerable and significantly high new cases. And it respects no boundaries. When we talk about boundaries, we're not only talking about the geophysical, it also crosses boundaries of the psycho-emotional, of the economic boundaries, as well as boundaries of socialization, as we have seen the isolation of many communities, specifically the high risk, which are the elderly. And there is this need for scientific evidence actions by government and also by families as well as individuals. Action must be framed, or decisions on actions on COVID-19 must be framed in the proper perspective. And we need to learn that norms could be localized or it could be on a global scope. And these norms can be along control, vaccines, and economic actions. And why this topic? Because in Albay, as Bicolanos, we always go by our rallying cry, Sararo, Sarabay, para sa mamamayan. And with the global footprint of this pandemic, I hope you still are with us with the math department. Let's realize that this was caused and is caused by a flu-like virus, and it is formally named as SARS-CoV-2. And to think that this was first learned in December 31 by a report from Wuhan to the WHO, or World Health Organization. The most common symptoms of this are fever, dry cough, and fatigue. But these are common symptoms for the regular flu, and it could be mistaken for that. That's why the virulent difficulty of this COVID-19. The less common symptoms are loss of taste or smell, nasal congestion, sore throat, headache, muscle joint, and even some of these are common symptoms of flu except for significant loss of taste or smell. And if we look at the timeline of coronavirus onset, look at the timeline in there, all the sources of information in this presentation are recognized, as none of this is from me, just integrating all the information or data for the appreciation of all of us so that we may be guided by all of this. So the timeline of the onset would have to be at the danger point on the 7th day. And the critical periods will be on the 8th up until 11th. So what does it mean? The moment we have the symptoms, we need to be very vigilant that we do not progress to the manifestation of the more difficult symptoms that will require hospitalization or intensive care management, understanding that our hospitals, first and foremost, will be very expensive and they may be overcrowded. And now, in the global domain, you look at this graph. This is by the day, and if you get to see it, the trend February 2021, it still is slowly going up, and we don't know if this trend will either go up or down, with the understanding that there are at least 3 variants or distinct variants of COVID-19. And if we will have to track this live, we will get to see how this progress. And as the stock exchange trend, it's very difficult to forecast given that there are too many factors that must be incorporated in the model. And one of that model is your and mine's action on controlling the virus. And what are the variants that I spoke of? This B.1.17, look, there is the numeric sequencing, and this was first identified in the United Kingdom. And then we have the B.1.351, which was detected first in South Africa, independent of the variant from the United Kingdom, and is spreading by reports to the US by the first month of this year. P.1 is from Brazil, and it has also invaded some parts of the world, specifically the US, because of travel. But it was first detected not in Brazil, but from travelers from Brazil in Japan. Had it not been detected in Japan because of testing, it could have spread more virulently across the world by now. Because what is very difficult with this variation, mutation of the virus will require adjustment in the vaccine. We need to understand that vaccines are declared by the WHO from conferences with the experts in epidemiology and virology. Okay. What are the updates? As of now, globally, as of March 8th, which was yesterday, we had this many number of cases, 117 million. Deaths is at 2 million, or 2% of the cases, and recovery is at 79.14%. The active cases at 21 or almost 22 million has 99.6% in the mild condition. Mild condition means this will be easily handled and managed and resolved. The serious is only 0.4%. When we say serious, these are the ones, if you were paying attention on the timeline of the onset of the virus, these are the ones who progressed from day 7 onwards. And these are the serious, and these are the most likely to progress to death. The closed cases comes from this recovered, and we get to see that only 3% of the closed cases will progress to death. Now, how do we appreciate this information? Because the focus is on COVID-19, everybody is unaware that had we been this conscious of other sources of mortality, which could be flu, which could be measles, which could be cancer, which could be renal failure due to diabetes, then we would have known that flu has a 2% death rate. And that is a sobering information for us to be able to understand that 2.2% of death due to coronavirus is like flu. And this should not really be a cause for too much the extreme concern and the extreme lockdowns many governments have imposed on the people, considering that the economic impact will not be able to rationalize such extreme lockdowns. Now, who is at most risk? Are you? Are we? Am I at most risk? So people aged 60 years and over and those with underlying medical problems are at higher risk of what? Developing serious illness. Okay, but those predisposed or with comorbidities, with blood pressure, heart, lung problems, diabetes, obesity, or cancer, or high-risk lifestyles are at greater risks. That is why there is this understanding that men are more likely to be sick of COVID than women. And this, underneath this kind of declaration or behind this declaration, is because of the explanatory variable on the model that men are more likely to engage in more risky lifestyles such as smoking, drinking, but there are women I know of who drink more than men, so we need to adjust this kind of model. And if you know some, warn them. Okay. And a case study on that declaration of the elderly being more prone to contracting COVID-19 is a case of the New York-based data banking, which clearly provides the 14.3% death rate on the 75 plus years old and 6.5% on the 65 to 74 years old. Okay. Why this as a case study? Because there is no global database that accounts for age in terms of the reporting protocol to WHO. And now, with respect to the sex-differentiated case reporting, yung sinasabi that men are more likely to have COVID than women, we need to be careful about that because from the Global 50/50, that organization, the red ones that you see in the map do not report sex-differentiated information. And those with the blue have reported cases, but those in this mustard like the faint colors, the areas with that kind of coloring have not reported, okay, either case or death in the past month. Okay, so it's the red which will be the cautionary evidence that most do not report sex differentiated COVID-19 data on mortality. Okay. Which countries have the lowest COVID-19 cases? This will be deaths per 1 million population. Normal mortality rates are reported in deaths per 1,000. Okay, so this is deaths per 1 million, which tells us that this is higher than deaths per 1,000. So we have Burundi, Tanzania, Vietnam, Taiwan, Mongolia, Thailand, and Bhutan. What are the total cases of COVID per 1 million of the population? So we have these increasing cases, but you need to appreciate that even when Bhutan has considerable cases per 1 million, death per 1 million is low. So we need to appreciate these records together with the combined understanding of this information. Now, lowest COVID-19 cases is expected to be recorded by the G7 countries if we only talk about the health services and the logistics available for them. Now, when we look at this information, the G7 countries from US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and Japan manifest higher deaths per 1 million population than these countries, giving us the evidence that no, it's not about who can afford as much as they can for providing the kind of hospital and intensive care units. It's about how people act on the difficulty or on this kind of pandemic. If we look at the highest COVID-19 cases, these are the countries, and look how big that value in deaths per 1 million of population. And the highest COVID cases we would expect to be experienced or recorded by the lowest GDP countries. The lowest GDP countries are this Burundi up to Afghanistan in increasing lowest GDP values. And if we look at this, these are reasonable deaths per 1 million except for South Africa. South Africa also, because of the pressure of the total number of cases per 1 million of population. But for the highest COVID cases, these truly are significant values compared to those of the rest of the world. Now, from the understanding of the beginning footprints of COVID-19, it was first named in January 15, 2019 by the Taiwan CDC of the Ministry of Health. As what? As a notifiable communicable disease of the 5th category. That's why the delay in transmission of the report from Wuhan, China, which experienced the cluster of this notifiable communicable disease earlier than the reporting date, gave the virus lead time to spread. So from the reporting in December 2019, by Feb 6 of 2020, this viral disease has spread to at least 25 countries. And we need to recognize that the Philippines started to lock down on March 16, 2020. The disease is officially named as COVID-19, recognizing that it started in 2019. Reporting date was December. Naming of it was in January 2019. Declared officially as COVID-19 in Feb 11, 2020. This is when the World Health Organization was working towards a declaration of a pandemic on COVID-19. Now, what are the COVID-19 statistics and facts? Okay, so let's look at all of this from the point of view of the continents. If we look at Africa, a population, a continent with 57 countries, and the population is in the trillion, 1.4 trillion, and deaths will be 334.2 per 1 million population overall. And the top countries of the continent Africa will be this. And we get to see that these are very large cases of total cases per 1 million population, and the deaths per 1 million population are in the hundreds for the top 5, not in the thousands as for the highest countries with COVID-19 deaths. Antarctica, which is no man's land, there are no residents in there, and it was thought to be COVID-free up until December 22, 2020, when 36 of one station tested positive for the virus. Of the 36, 26 of this was from the Chilean army. And the 10 were civilian maintenance personnel. If we need to probably over hypothesize or conclude on this information, not one of those who tested positive was a scientist, because most of those in Antarctica are involved with scientific studies. And that in December 22, 2020, all the continents had COVID-19. Now, for Asia, consisting of 47 countries with total population of 4.6 billion, the top countries with higher deaths per 1 million are Georgia, Lebanon, Iran, Israel, and Jordan. And if you notice, these are more or less contiguous to one another. Okay. And the lower portions will be Taiwan, Vietnam, Mongolia, Bhutan, Thailand, China, and Singapore. These are the top and these are the lower. And this has nothing to do with the population if you get to look at the information given out in this table. Now, China, as of today, has the low in the lower end of the spectrum by the number of deaths per 1 million on COVID. And that tells us that it started with them and they learned well from their experience. What a way to understand evidence-based action. Okay. In Australia, consisting of 12 territories, Australia has a very low record of death due to COVID. It only recorded very few deaths, and the values, the only territory with reasonable record of deaths per 1 million was French Polynesia. And what are included in this Australian case scenario? We have this tracking for Australia on the deaths rates and the recovery rates. And you get to see that government action was able to stop the infection rate early on in the fight against COVID-19. So what does this tell us? The numeric footprints are evidences which can be used by government and all other institutions acting on the COVID-19 virulence. As to Europe, with 48 countries, with considerably lower population of 747 million, we have these countries with the higher, these are the highest end of the spectrum, and these are from Gibraltar, San Marino, up to the United Kingdom. And the lower end also still will manifest considerable deaths per 1 million population. And that, in a nutshell, will tell us that Europe has considerable records of COVID-19 mortality. Okay, for North America, with 39 countries, considerably low population of 592 million, has high death rates deaths per 1 million population for USA, Mexico, Panama, Belize, and Aruba. And the lower end of these countries will include Grenada, Haiti, Nicaragua, Cayman Islands, and Cuba. And if you look, there is such a big difference in the deaths per 1 million of population from this group to this group, telling us that even as they are from the same continent, the action of both government and the people will make a difference in the fight against COVID. Now, for South America, with 14 countries, they have high deaths for this. And these are contiguous countries: Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Chile. And then the lower recorded deaths per 1 million still will record significant deaths per 1 million values. Okay, so comparatively speaking, of the 7 continents, Asia considerably did well, and you would have noticed that in the first geo map, which gave us the bubble graph of COVID-19 cases. Okay, now what government actions provide us with specific interventions? We have the decisive exemplar countries, South Korea, Vietnam, and Germany. This is not the latest kind of, hold on please. Okay, the exemplar companies are South Korea, Vietnam, and Germany. These are governments which provided with role model action on COVID-19. If you look at this graph, this will be the share of COVID-19 tests that are positive. This is for Italy, Germany, United Kingdom, South Korea, Vietnam, and Australia. Okay, if we look, Italy started with very high incidence of case positives, and also Germany. But then the 3 countries, exemplar countries, are Germany, South Korea, and Vietnam. What did Vietnam do best? Vietnam did best by using a well-developed public health system, a decisive central government, and a proactive containment strategy. The very, very notable practice of Vietnam was to contact trace up to 3 degrees of contacts and containing them in government facilities so that all of those who needed to be quarantined did not have to worry about where, how much, and how they will handle themselves. and they were locked down immediately. The advantage of Vietnam was because it experienced SARS as an epidemic in 2003 and the human avian flu in 2004 and again in 2010. And that experience told them how to be careful next time they have a kind of burst in a pandemic that also has affected them. So it had both the experience and the infrastructure gaining from SARS and the avian flu. And even if it's a highly centralized country, local governments were given the authority, the autonomy to make specific swift response so that actions could be done at the local level. With respect to South Korea, which is a distinct country because it is bordered on the north by North Korea, which data the world is in the dark as to how many or what is going on with their COVID-19 experience. So South Korea is distinct from the rest of the countries because it has a buffer zone of North Korea. Still, it's an exemplar country in terms of COVID-19 action because of its effective communication due to their technological advancement and the aggressive creative contact tracing that they have and the strict quarantine policy. One thing which we need to highlight with South Korea is their action not to unnecessarily harm their economy. And therefore, their lockdowns are rationalized by the understanding that the economic activities will have to go on with responsible quarantine and people's actions. Okay, so the noteworthy thing with South Korea is their cultural and legal tolerance for personal data sharing. In most countries, this is covered by privacy law, as well as this kind of difficulty is experienced by the Philippines. And because of their technological solutions, they were able to aggressively act on COVID-19, which similar solution is being applied and has been applied early on by Singapore. What are the noteworthy actions of South Korea? The investments in preparedness, decisive and data-driven leadership. This is what we mean by the numeric footprints of COVID-19. Leadership must be data-driven or evidence-based. And one thing with South Korea is their strategic clarity, okay? And their willingness to innovate. The challenge for them is to trace the asymptomatic young people, which is sitting small clusters. And they have recognized that as requiring innovative action. For Germany, okay? Germany's action will have to be recognized for how transparent they are with their actions. They have clear expectations and they provide transparency on those actions to the public. This is something that the world will have to learn from Germany. And because of that transparency, they also have been affected by the possibility of a second wave of infections because of this kind of public interaction. There was the bid and still is the bid for greater freedom because the Germans, as history would have taught all of us, are very, very definite on their actions and very aggressive. They gave us Hitler and they also gave us so much of the historical knowledge base that they are known for. And that's a trade-off for being very aggressive on being informed there is this greater need for freedom of movement, therefore the possibility of a second wave of infections. But because they focus on three indicators of infection rate, disease severity, and health system capacity, they are able to provide very reasonable and on-point form of effective interventions for the war against COVID-19. What also must be understood is that Germany, understanding that local public health facilities which were understaffed will have to be fully staffed, they had to act on that, and they did it. So 3 exemplars, and then our own footprints. Do our own footprints on COVID-19 provide lessons for future generations? Yes, they will always provide lessons, but are these lessons of the progressive kind, or will it be of the negative side? You and I can have our reasons and answers to this, but let's look at the footprints. As of March 9, which is today, early morning, these are the latest for the Philippines. And we have 5 new deaths as of March 9, and we have 3,356 new cases. Understanding the timeline of the coronavirus, early on presented in this presentation, 3,356 should not be pushed towards the 7th day up until the critical period where intensive care will be required. Against the total new deaths of 3,678 for the world, and against the total global value for new cases of 199,645, this is a small quantity, but because of our capacity to act on this kind of pressure on the health system and the economy, we cannot afford to say that these are small values that we need to attend to and can ignore. No, these are values that require reasonable, rational, and decisive actions. Now, for the Philippines, this is the track of the weekly cases of COVID. And you look, the graph, it peaked at about somewhere in, I don't know where, because we now have a very faint graph. And this will be, the cutoff will be March 8 for this graph, or March 9. And then we have this slowly upward curve. And we need to be wary of our actions then. So what do we know? We have all these total cases of 594,412 and deaths at 12,516. For Bicol, we only had 147 deaths total, and that's small. And we need to rationalize the lockdown actions and the impact on the local economy. For the Philippines, the difficulty with this presentation was accessing so much data, but for the reproductive number of COVID-19, as of January 6, 2021, it was given out as 1.1. 1.1 because it's close to 1 could be understood to be reasonable, but RO1 greater than 1 means infection might increase. An RO or R naught of less than 1 is what we need to work for. For Metro Manila, the highest R naught or reproductive number for COVID-19 was 1.65 in July and 0.66 in October 2020. 1.65 RO means 100 people infected of the COVID first level will infect 165 more. And so the progression will grow, and we do not like that. For an R naught of 1.1 for the Philippines declared in January 6, 2021, we are being warned by the scientists that this 1.1 R naught is not a very good one when we consider the variants of COVID-19, because this can escalate to very high numbers if and when that variant cannot be inoculated or cannot be aggressively dealt with by current practices or available medications. What are the daily positive rate of COVID-19? These are the daily positivity rate of COVID-19 for the Philippines. And as of February 1 to 21, the graph again is going up. What are the highest cases in terms of region? We have NCR, Region 4A, Region 8, Region 3, and Region 6. For the provinces and city, thank you. We are not part of this. We have Quezon City, City of Manila, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal. And if you notice, these provinces and cities are those with very high traffic of movement. That means with higher economic traffic of movement, protocols that are effective could be imposed as that imposed by Vietnam, Germany, and South Korea. Okay, what are the economic impact of COVID-19? The Asian Development Bank of the PH quarter of Asian Development Bank has computed the possible losses for the Philippines at 10% of GDP in 2020 and 2021. 10% means we're breaching the 10% cut or ceiling, and they're estimating even in June 2020 that as much as $38.1 billion or 1.9 trillion pesos or 11.5% of GDP has been lost to COVID-19 should restrictions drag on for 6 months. And it did drag on for 6 months. So this estimate of breaching the 10% of GDP as losses due to COVID would have been reached by this country by now. Okay, what are the science footprints and why must we learn our lessons well? Global data indicate that fatality rates among men are higher, except for India, Vietnam, Nepal, and Slovenia. People younger than 65 years old have very small risks, therefore they can be made to work, which means they may be exempted from the lockdowns. Okay? But we need to concentrate the lockdowns on protecting the high-risk elderly subpopulation of this country. And with the kind of disinfection that is in place, what science has established is that the use of 1,000 to 2,000 milligram per liter chlorine-containing disinfectant is able to effectively ward off COVID-19. And this was performed in 2020 August by isolating from isolation wards of high-frequency hospital admissions in Asia. Okay. Now, with the understanding of vaccination being publicly declared as an action against COVID-19, we need to understand that there is this implication of achieving herd immunity. Herd immunity is herd, H-E-R-D. I'm not too calm to be able to pronounce that properly, but this is when we are able to achieve 95% immunity of 95% 5% of the population. So R's naught must be made to grow down, because that would tell us that the community, be it the country or Bicol region or Albay province or Legazpi city, has achieved close to 95% of the population immune, which tells us that perfect immunity of the entire population is an ideal state which is realistically not achievable. So we allow for 5% of the population to be not immune to the disease. Okay. For the global median R naught, it was in July 2020 valued at 5.7, and it was controlled to 1.1, I think. And then for the United Kingdom, which experienced steeping of their infection rate, as of February 28, 2021, its R naught is at 0.6 to 0.9, which is less than 1, and is a good thing. But because of the new UK variant, they are vigilant about tracing and tracking their R naught. And as an example of how it is tracked, look at how the United Kingdom tracks their RO over time. I cannot find this data for the Philippines, neither for the entire globe. Okay, so what do we understand from this? When we track this and layer government action, if government action has been strict, if lockdowns were extremely strict about this time, that means those measures were not okay. But if lockdowns were done in here and we are not going down, therefore actions, evidence-based actions, were good. And in here, they are evidence of how well the United Kingdom across their territories are able to manage this. Okay. And what now is a learning from Wuhan. Okay. For Wuhan, look at how they were able to manage and bring down by March 1. That's about close to 0. Okay. And the difficulty of pushing this lower and lower will be on the government action, but we need to congratulate them from a high R naught to a manageable R naught. But the question is, how is the rest of the world performing? Unfortunately, data is not available, but if you look at the blue line in here, which means restrictions were given by about January, first week of January, and you get the abrupt drop of their R naught, which is anyway the target trend. Okay. Now, what are the vaccine's footprints? Are we able to learn from the past, or do we need to be brought to our full attention by being confronted with so much of the evidence of how virulent this virus is if there is no effective action by you and I together with our own government? Okay. If we look at the history of vaccines timeline, we would appreciate that centuries ago, the world had experienced and continued to experience some forms of, so let's look at this timeline. Okay, this timeline will bring us from year 1000, 1600. If we drag these are the cases where all of these pandemics and epidemics did happen. And there's a lot to have learned from. Okay? And look, from the year 1000 to 2020, okay, where was Pasteur in here? Okay? So vaccines started when that guy with a lot of mathematical skills thought in their year of existence as math in the modern world, at their specific timeline, Pasteur was able to isolate viruses and was able to provide the world with the new vaccine. Just this presentation is to just let you know that there is available evidence on how the world can learn from the actions of the past. And here, if you're inquisitive, you can look at just how much of the resources of the world were utilized to be able to create some form of immunity for specific viruses. And if you look at the testing, many of the tests were performed in Africa. Okay? Why that is the case? That is for the pharmaceuticals to answer. You and I can have our own conclusions. And therefore, if our vaccines, this is year 2000, okay, and we have endemic measles eliminated from the USA, and then in 2002, because of the threat of bioweapons, it prompted many countries to provide vaccinations for bioweapons. Remember the orange cloud, the Agent Orange as a bioweapon? And some of the claims of dissenting groups, COVID-19 is treated as a bioweapon to eliminate some of the world's population. Okay, and we have the last few decades of this present time devoted to all of this. Meningococcal vaccine, okay? We have the rotavirus vaccine and Syrian crisis on polio and Ebola, okay? And the last one, this ends at 2016, we have the Zika, and then in 2016 and 2018, measles, while it has been eliminated in some parts of the world, continue to ravage some parts of the world. We don't have the latest because vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, is not declared in here because it needs to mature. Okay? It needs to mature. Okay, now, what are vaccines? Vaccines are supposed to be licensed and must be judged according to efficacy and duration of protection. The current vaccines are supposed to have above 80% efficacy, and as to the latest COVID vaccine, the duration of efficacy is estimated at 12 to 18 months, which tells us that if you do get the vaccine, you need to have successive shots of the same vaccine. So what does this tell us? Infection to prevent severe COVID-19, prior exposure to COVID-19 does not prevent one from re-exposure to COVID-19. That's a sobering thought, which means that if you tested positive, you may test positive at a succeeding future time. Okay. And because I'm not an expert on this, Let's listen in 5 minutes to the chief scientist of WHO on the vaccine.
We're hearing about variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. How concerned should we be, and do vaccines provide protection against these variants? Welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith, and this is WHO's Conversations in Science. Answering these questions today will be WHO's Chief Scientist, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. Welcome, Soumya.
Hello, Vismita. Nice to be back with you again on Science in 5.
Soumya, tell us what we know about these variants. How concerned should we be? And is it unusual for viruses to change?
From the beginning of the year, we've been tracking this virus and we know that it's gone through a lot of changes. And there have been variants, two particular variants that have been reported to the WHO. One was identified in the UK and one was identified in South Africa. They do have one change in common. We call it the N501Y mutation. But otherwise, the two are different. And the reason there's concern is that both of these variants were associated with an increase in the number of cases. Responses. And so a couple of changes or mutations in the virus should not make these vaccines ineffective. But right now, there are studies going on in labs around the world to actually confirm that. And in the small possibility that perhaps these are less effective against one or both of these variants, nowadays, the way vaccines are developed, it will be possible actually to also change the composition of the antigens in the vaccines quite quickly.
Soumya, with this pandemic, the world is in this situation where new evidence comes in almost every day and we're learning new things, but at the same time, we have to act in real time to protect ourselves. So tell us how, in this new scenario with the new variants, how can people protect themselves and what should governments be doing?
So what we know about this variant and previous variants is that the virus is still behaving in the same way, it's spreading in the same way. And the more we give it a chance to spread and to multiply within humans, the more chances it's going to have to keep changing itself. That's its natural property. So we really need to go and focus now and attack it and make sure that we're doing everything we can do to reduce transmission. And we know the things that work. We know that testing, that identifying those who are infectious, that being able to provide them support of isolation, tracking and contact tracing, and quarantining all the contacts, making sure that people continue to comply with the physical distancing, with wearing a mask, with avoiding crowded places, avoiding closed settings where there are a lot of people, washing hands, respiratory etiquette, staying home if you're sick. All of these things together uh, definitely make a difference in bringing down transmission. That's been shown again and again in country after country. So I think at this time we need to double down, because we know the same public health and social measures will work against these variants as have worked in the past. And right now, we're at a very critical stage in many parts of the world where we really need to be focusing on bringing down the transmission. And that in turn will help in reducing how much this virus can actually change.
Thank you, Soumya. There you have it, WHO's Chief Scientist, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, talking about variants and vaccines. Until next time, then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Okay, that's the chief scientist of WHO from the expert. You have the information that you require for your action on the vaccination for COVID-19. Now, on the economic impact of COVID-19, the pandemic is calculated to have accounted for at least 10 trillion loss in GDP in 2020 to 2021. But this loss is simply an underestimate, and greater than 10 trillion is expected to be lost on GDP across the world. These losses is calculable and to be matched by the depression and the two world wars in one go for COVID-19. And the underestimation is sobering. We need to think about it. That's why there is greater bid for opening borders, opening the economic sector of any country and every country, so that slowly and gradually economies can start to recover. The World Bank's projected global expansion in 2020, without knowledge that there will be a COVID-19, what was estimated at 2.5% of GDP, amounting to 86 trillion. The calculation of how much was lost was at 6.6%, and that would be a lot of losses. And this value is computed at 2020 prices, and this is calculated to be about more than 10 trillion in 2020 prices. Okay, and that's the end of COVID-19 footprint for the world and for this country. I hope that the mathematics department has given you cause to pause, to think, and to always reference all your actions, all your decisions, even your thoughts on evidence, so that guidance on what comes out of your mouth, what comes out of your brains, and what comes out of your soulful rumination will be reasonable. Thank you very much for giving the math department and mathematics a chance to be part of your day and to be part of your world. Thank you. God bless everyone. God bless Bicol University, and God bless the College of Science.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Carol Boyon. That was really a very informative and very extensive sharing of information for the numeric footprints of COVID-19. Some takeaways, it's not about the country type, but it is about how people act on the difficulties that we encounter. Also, thank you for sharing the best practices of some countries who were able to manage COVID-19 pandemic, and also for all the data that you have shared. Me personally, I have learned a lot from it, given that I don't watch a lot of news. And also for sharing the strategic clarity, for providing transparency. These are from the countries with best practices, and also uh, the evidence-based action. So the world must learn from the actions of the past. So thank you so much, Professor Boyan. So at this juncture, maybe we can at this time read a question from our participants. So this is for Prof. Carol Boyan. So this is from our participant, Professor Bernadette. So what do these numeric footprints imply to all of us educators and scientists? What challenges are posed for us Pinoys, and where will these footprints lead us in the future? So, Ma'am Boyan. Or anyone from the faculty of the math department. So to repeat the,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. The implication of these footprints, I think, was brought about and clarified in this presentation. But the implication is for us not to randomly act on something where our limited knowledge or information do not grant us clarity as to what, how, why of the what, the whys, and the hows of the question. So the implication is to always cite evidences, data, research results on how we should act on these footprints. The footprints tell us that if the action of government is not based on evidence, be cautious of following that action. Learn from those who have evidence that their programs are truly effective and they have tracked how these actions have resulted in specific results, targeted results. And if we are unable to appreciate the numbers, we could be very afraid. We could be traumatized. We could be physically brought to depression, anxiety, to even dark thoughts about the options of this world. But what the COVID footprints has given us is that mortality rate is low. And it is even analogous to the seasonal flu. If we track mortality rate due to cancer, to diabetes, consequent the renal failure due to diabetes, the mortality rates will be high. We were just being conscious of COVID-19 as a collective humanity. And because of that, there is this collective grief that is not reconciled by data. So what is the takeaway for the Pinoys? What's the challenge? The challenge is to be very calm about this, be very reasonable, be confined to the numbers, and be careful of how we act on the numbers and how we share this knowledge for the good of humanity so that we can stop the fear. We could at least listen to science and lessen the fear, the trauma, because recovery rate is very high. It's more than 99%. Mortality totality is 0.4%. Of the closed cases, mortality is 3%. So don't be too afraid. What is the challenge to us educators? For us to be open to sharing with our students and also with those we associate with, always not putting ahead what we think or how we think of this data in terms of conclusions, but let the experts make the conclusions for us, and let that be the knowledge we transfer. Let that be the information that we share. And the footprints would lead us to a safer, more reasonable place where compassion will be the the ultimate core goal that will prod our actions. If we care for those we associate with, we will be at a good place, and we will be always in association with the rest of the world, a socially integrated humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Boyan. That was really a very extensive answer for us for the question of Professor Badet. So, thank you again to the math department and for sharing with us all this information. So, at this point, maybe we can go to the awarding of the certificates to our speakers. So, may I ask our representative from the BUEMD to share with us, okay, the certificate. So, the certificate of commendation is awarded to Professor Myra Angela L. Lola, Professor Jonathan Borromeo, okay, for sharing, Professor Emmy I. Tomenyo, Professor Jason Lucilo, and Professor Maria Carolina Boyon for sharing their time and expertise as speakers, which contributed to the success of the BUCS Reach to Teach webinar series on the topic Numeric Footprints of COVID-19, and also the teaching topic on teaching and learning strategies for JEC 14 Math in the Modern World. Uh, Given this, now, can you please, given this, held on March 9, 2021, via the BU Extension and Management Division Facebook Live, given this 9th day of March 2021 at Bicol University College of Science, Legazpi City. Signed, Professor Jocelyn E. Serrano, Dean, Bicol University College of Science, and Professor Rowena F. Zoilo, Director of the Bicol University Extension and Management Division. So, okay, so congratulations again to the faculty of the math department. So before we end, may I please ask everyone to first please open their cameras for the picture taking of our participants for this day's webinar on given to us by the math department and the College of Science, as well as the BUEMD. So, Mel, would you be taking the pictures of our participants, or who else will take the picture? Okay, take it away, Mel. All right. So before we end, we would like to acknowledge all the efforts and great work of the following to make this webinar series a success. Of course, for this day, the math department and their faculty, Professor Jason Lucilo, Professor Emmy Tumenio, Professor Myra Angela Lola, Professor Jonathan Borromeo, and of course, they are headed by their department chair, Professor Maria Carolina Boyon. So thank you very much. We would also like to thank the faculty, the admin, and the staff of Bicol University College of Science, headed, of course, by our Associate Dean, Professor Romel Evan Paje, and our Dean, Professor Jocelyn E. Serrano. Thank you also, of course, to the BU Extension Management Division, headed by Professor Zoila. And with us now is Mel. Thank you, Mel. And lastly, we would like to thank our participants and viewers on FB Live, of course, for your presence and support to this endeavor. Again, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.